So what do you think the protest is about at its heart?
I think there was an undercurrent of a lot of frustration and a lot of people who were scared and lost their jobs from the COVID crisis. So 30 million plus unemployment filed claims. A lot of people who are just scared of how many people of color are being affected by the virus and dying from it. And then you have this spark that happened with George Floyd in Minneapolis, and it showed again how an innocent black man can be killed by police brutality in such a clear-cut case on video. And it feels, I think, to a lot of people, I can sympathize with them, that nothing is really changing with the system, and this injustice and this negative police action and police brutality continues in the country.
Mm-hmm. You said before that you weren't too shocked or too surprised that there are so many protesters.
I think it's almost the perfect storm because there are so many people who are out of work right now, who are frustrated from being inside for months, who feel like the government, especially the federal government, hasn't really done a good job handling the COVID crisis. And then you have the history of protesting police brutality, especially against people of color. The peaceful ones, the kneeling during the national anthem and all the peaceful protests and other methods haven't resulted in any real change. And people always criticize those protests anyway. So I think there's a lot of pent-up frustration and just desperation that people have, that nothing's changing.
I see. But it feels like there are a lot of different forces or sidetracked
For
a
sure.
lot, right? People are stealing things or set things on fires.
Yeah.
Why is it happening?
You have a bunch of different groups of people who are protesting, I think. Obviously, I'm not in the U.S. right now, but from what I'm seeing and hearing from people, you have obviously those who are sympathetic to those who want justice, for George Floyd, and make sure that the police who did that are brought to real justice. And then you have the groups who are just kind of allies with them, and they might be Caucasians, they might be other people of color. But you're always going to have, when you have mass protests across the country like this, millions of people protesting, you're always going to have groups that come in and do things that are not in line with the overall goal. And I think the group, all these protesters are not a monolithic group. They're not just all for one cause. You have people who are taking advantage of the situation.
Got it.
And you have people who are counter-protesting. I mean, I saw a guy, presumably racist guy, who brought an arrow, crossbow and arrow, to try to shoot protesters. He was counter-protesting in a very violent way. So I think you have a lot of groups who are doing that. And then finally, a lot of the police forces are not handling it well. They're stoking the violence by shooting tear gas. They shot a reporter and made her blind. They arrested CNN reporters. So and then pushed a lot of protesters or otherwise abused them.
But one interesting thing is that I saw a lot of white people, even police, join the protest too, right?
Yeah, I think that's a really good way for police to try to calm the violence and make sure that things stay peaceful in their area. They're showing the solidarity with the purpose, because there are policemen, I'm sure, policemen and women who want things to change in the system, who want to root out the systemic racism. But it's just hard to tell how many of them are doing it. That certainly seems like a smarter way to sympathize and empathize with the protesters.
I see. So, and also people will look at it saying, hey, it's in the midst of combating COVID. Do you think people are still aware of it?
I think it, I can just guess how it feels, but I think a lot of people are probably feeling it's more urgent. There was a black man who went running, he went jogging in the wrong neighborhood, and some racist came out and questioned him and basically ended up killing him. So if you can't go for a run, if you can't be arrested by the cops and you have to fear for your life instead of due process, knowing due process is coming, there's a sense of urgency that's beyond what the threat of the invisible virus is.
I see. So at times like this, people always look up to their leaders. So how is Trump handling this?
he's very divisive, and I think that's how he rose to power, and it's how he seems to want to hold on to it. And he, I think he's the racist in chief. He's doing a lot of things to escalate the violence, to make references in his tweets and when he speaks to racist quotes and ways of cracking down on these protesters that he didn't do with other protests that supported him, even from conspiracy theorists. So I think he's handling it very poorly, just like he has handled the COVID crisis very poorly.